Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Something deep in the heart of every human is this desire for things to be made right in our world and in our own hearts and lives. And that's one of the reasons I so enjoy the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. I read them as a kid under my strawberry shortcake comforter, and I still read them today. I cherish every word in those books about adventures and battles and children who are chosen to become kings and queens. And the great lion Aslan, who C.S. Lewis paints as Christ in these stories. Oh, how I recommend them to you. So grab a winter coat and let's make some footprints in the snow. We're going to go to Narnia as we kick off our time together today with these words. Wrong will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrows will be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter meets its death. And when he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again. We're just beginning to see our tulips pop out of the ground, just the green shoots so far, but it's a sign that spring is near. I believe God turns winter into spring and night into day and the caterpillar into a butterfly to remind you and I that one day all things will be made right. Hi, I'm Erica. Welcome to the Bible for Busy People. I'm so glad you're here as we continue to study one of the most amazing stories in the Bible. Queen Esther is a story about how God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things and how he makes things right. It's a story about good and evil and reaping what you sow. The players in the story, we see Esther, a beautiful young Jewish girl, chosen to be queen. She didn't ask to be placed in this royal position, but God put her there for such a time as this. We see Mordecai, a man whose faith was put to the test. He was put under fire and he came out not even smelling like smoke. He was faithful to King Xerxes and to the Lord his God. We see Haman, the king's right-hand man, who hatches an evil plan because of the pride and hatred in his heart. He wants to kill all of the Jewish people, and yet he doesn't know that the king is married to a Jewish queen. And now we come to a point in the story where all of these three people will reap what they have sown. Join me in Esther chapter 8, beginning in verse 1. On that same day, little note here, the day that the king found out that Haman wanted to kill his own wife, King Xerxes gave the property of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Then Mordecai was brought before the king, for Esther had told the king how they were related. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai to be in charge of Haman's property. Wow, right? Then Esther went again before the king, falling down at his feet and begging him with tears to stop the evil plot devised by Haman, the Agagite, against the Jews. Again, the king held out the gold scepter to Esther, so she rose and stood before him. Esther said, "If it please the king, and if I have found favor with him, and if he thinks it is right, and if I am pleasing to him, let there be a decree that reverses the orders of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, who ordered that Jews throughout all the king's provinces should be destroyed. For how can I endure to see my people and my family slaughtered and destroyed?" Then King Xerxes said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, "I have given Esther the property of Haman, and he has been impaled on a pole because he tried to destroy the Jews. Now go ahead and send a message to the Jews in the king's name, telling them whatever you want, and seal it with the king's signet ring. But remember that whatever has already been written in the king's name and sealed with his signet ring can never be revoked." So on June 25th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as Mordecai dictated. It was sent to the Jews and to the highest officers, the governors and the nobles of all the 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. Remember, note here, he was the king of Persia. He was a powerful man. The decree was written in the scripts and languages of all the peoples of the empire, including that of the Jews. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Mordecai sent the dispatches by swift messengers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king's service. The king's decree gave the Jews in every city authority to unite to defend their lives. They were allowed to kill, slaughter, and annihilate anyone of any nationality or province who might attack them or their children and wives, and to take the property of their enemies. The day chosen for this event throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes was March 7th of the next year. A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples so that the Jews would be ready to take revenge on their enemies on the appointed day. So urged on by the king's command, the messengers rode out swiftly on fast horses bred for the king's service. The same decree was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then Mordecai left the king's presence wearing the royal robe of blue and white, the great crown of gold, and an outer cloak of fine linen and purple. And the people of Susa celebrated the new decree. The Jews were filled with joy and gladness and were honored everywhere. In every province and city, wherever the king's decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced and had a great celebration and declared a public festival and holiday. And many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared what the Jews might do to them. It's an amazing turn of events, isn't it? Haman sowed hatred and pride, and he reaped death. Mordecai sowed faithfulness, and he reaped favor and purpose and life. Esther sowed courage, and she reaped favor and purpose and life. God is all about making things right. Until next time, you are really loved. Thank you so much for listening to the Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or you're ready to go a little deeper in your faith, we've posted some resources for you in our show notes. We'd love for you to share this podcast with a friend and leave us a review. It helps us reach even more people with the hope of Jesus. This podcast is part of Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and live in God's purpose for your life. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at onpurposely.com.